Ion drive powering down and repulsor lift engaged. The craft folded its long wings upward to provide access to the main hold, then settled gently to the ground. No sooner had the boarding ramp extended than a squad of elite troopers filed out, the red markings on their armor identifying them as Coruscant shock troopers. A much taller figure followed, attired head to foot in black. What in the moons of Bogdan? New breed of trooper? Only if someone furnished the cloners with a donor a lot taller than the original. Salvo and his officers hastened over to the figure in black. Welcome, Lord Vader. Vader? The merc closest to Shrine said. Lord, Shrine thought. That's no clone, the first human said. Shrine didn't know what to make of Vader, although it was evident from the reaction of Salvo and his officers that they'd been told to expect someone of high rank. With his large helmet and flowing black cape, Vader looked like something borrowed from the Separatists, a grotesque, Grievous-like marriage of humanoid and machine. Salvo was gesturing to Clymer and the other commandos who'd remained at the Juggernaut. From inside the enormous vehicle floated a large anti-grav capsule with a transparent lid, which two of the commandos began to guide toward Vader's shuttle. As the capsule passed close to Shrine, he caught a glimpse of brown robes, and his stomach lurched into his throat. When the capsule finally reached Salvo, the commander opened an access panel in its base and removed 3 gleaming cylinders, which he proffered to Vader. Lightsabers. Vader nodded for the commander of his shock troopers to accept them. Then, in a deep, synthesized voice, said to Salvo,
What were you saving the bodies for, Commander? Posterity?
Salvo shook his head. We weren't issued any instructions. Vader's gloved hand waved him silent.
Dispose of them in any fashion you see fit.
Salvo was motioning Clymer to remove the anti-grav coffin when Vader stopped him.
Have you forgotten anyone, Commander?
Salvo regarded him. Forgotten, Lord Vader? Vader folded his arms across his massive chest.
6 Jedi were assigned to Murkhana, not 3.
Shrine traded brief glances with Chatak, who was also close enough to Vader to hear the remark. I'm sorry to report, Lord Vader, that the other 3 evaded capture, Salvo said. Vader nodded.
I already know that, Commander. And I haven't come halfway across the galaxy to chase them down.
He drew himself erect with a haughty air.
I've come to deal with the ones who allowed them to escape.
Clymer immediately stepped forward. That would be me. And us, the rest of Ion Team announced in unison. Vader stared down at the commandos.
You disobeyed a direct order from High Command.
The order made no sense at the time, Clymer answered for everyone. We thought it might be a Separatist trick.
What you thought has no bearing on this,
Vader said, pointing at Clymer.
You are expected to follow orders.
And we follow any reasonable ones. Killing our own didn't qualify. Vader continued to point his forefinger at Clymer's chest.
They weren't your allies, squad leader. They were traitors, and you sided with them.
Clymer stood his ground. Traitors how? Because a few of them tried to arrest Palpatine. I still don't see how that warrants a death penalty for the lot of them.
I'll be sure to notify the Emperor of your concerns.
You do that. Shrine closed his mouth and swallowed hard. Jedi had tried to arrest Palpatine. The Republic now had an Emperor.
Unfortunately, you won't be alive to learn of his response.
In one swift motion, he drew aside his cloak and pulled the lightsaber from his belt. Igniting with a snap hiss, the hilt projected a crimson blade. If Shrine had been confused earlier, he was now overwhelmed. A Sith blade? The 4 commandos fell back, raising their weapons. We'll accept execution for our actions, Clymer said, but not from some lapdog of the Emperor. Quickly, Salvo and his officers stepped forward, but Vader only showed them the palm of his hand.
No, Commander. Leave this to me.
With that, he moved on the commandos. Spreading out, they fired, but not a single bolt made it past Vader's blade. Deflected bolts went straight through the helmet visors of two of the commandos, and in two furious sweeps, Vader opened the pair from shoulder to hip, as if they were flimsy ration containers. Clymer and the third commando took advantage of the moment to break for the nearby tree line, firing as they fled. A deflection shot from Vader caught Clymer in the left leg, but the bolt didn't so much as slow him down. Vader tracked them, then motioned to his cadre of troopers.
I want them alive, Commander Appo.
Yes, Lord Vader. Appo's shock troopers raced off in pursuit of the commandos. Not one of Salvo's officers had fired a weapon, but now all of them were regarding Vader with a vigilant uncertainty, their rifles half raised.
Don't let my weapon fool you,
Vader told them, as if reading their thoughts.
I am not a Jedi.
From off the shrine's left, a familiar voice shouted, "But I am!" Bol Chatak had unwound her headcloth, revealing her vestigial horns, and had ignited the lightsaber Shrine thought she'd sense enough to ditch when they were captured. Vader whirled, watching Chatak as she began to stalk him, prisoners and troopers alike giving her wide berth.
So much the better that one of you survived,
he said, waving his lightsaber back and forth in front of him.
The commandos saved your life, and now you hope to save theirs. Is that it?
Chatak held her blue blade at shoulder height. My only intent is to take you out of the hunt. Vader angled his blade to point toward the ground.
You won't be the first Jedi I've killed.
Fearing that the prisoners would use the distraction to scatter, Salvo's men hurried in to form a cordon around them. Pressed in among everyone, Shrine lost sight of Chatak and Vader, but he could tell from the angry clashes of their blades that the duel was fast and furious. Momentarily immobilized, he allowed himself to be swept up in the surge of the crowd, so that he might be raised up over the heads of those in front of him. For a moment he was, just long enough to glimpse Chatak, all grace and speed, working her way into her opponent's space. Her moves were broad and circular, and the lightsaber seemed an extension of her. Vader, by contrast, was clumsy, and his strikes were mostly vertical. He was, however, a full head taller than Chatak, and incredibly powerful. At various times, his stances and techniques mimicked those of Ataro and Surisu, but Vader appeared to lack a style of his own, and executed his moves stiffly. With a whirling motion, Chatak got far enough inside Vader's long reach to inflict a forearm wound, but Vader scarcely reacted to the hit, and instead of seeing cauterized flesh, Shrine saw sparks and smoke fountain through Vader's slashed glove. Then he lost sight of them again. Wedged into the crowd, he wondered if he could use the Force to call one of the troopers' blaster rifles into his grip. He looked to the Force for guidance, and the Force restrained him. A pained cry cut through the chaos, and the crowd of prisoners parted just long enough for Shrine to see Chatak down on her knees in front of Vader, her sword arm amputated at the elbow. Vader had simply beaten her into submission, and now, with a flick of his bloodshine blade, he decapitated her. Sorrow lanced Shrine's heart. Unreadable behind his mask, Vader gazed down at Chatak's slack body. The clone troopers relaxed the cordon somewhat, allowing the prisoners to spread out. And the moment they did, Vader began to scan faces in the crowd. There were techniques for concealing one's Force abilities, and Shrine employed them. He also prepared for the possibility that he could be found out. But Vader's black gaze moved right past him. Instead, it appeared to focus on Oli's Starstone. Vader took a step in her direction. Now I have no choice, Shrine thought. He was ready to lunge when a shock trooper called to Vader, reporting that the commandos had been captured. Vader stopped in his tracks, glancing in Starstone's direction before turning to Salvo.
Commander, see to it that the prisoners are loaded into the transport.
Again, Vader scanned the crowd.
A less accommodating dungeon awaits them on Aegon 9.